All right, everybody, Ernst, especially of course for inviting me, but everybody, thanks very much that I could be here today. I think this is a fantastic, really a fantastic idea. And I think what the main thing that we are going to try and do here is to create knowledge about how to collectively start using space. I mean, the ownership is one thing, of course, but it's not real ownership anyway. Nothing is ever. And I would like to state it like that too. Okay, so my name is Aetzel Griffioen. And I've been asked to tell a bit about the historical concept of the Meent today. I wrote a few articles on it. As Ernst already said, it's a name that for Dutch people is well known because there are several things are called the Meent. In Rotterdam, for instance, the street just off the main street, the coal signal, is called the Meent. It's a big shopping street, and it's a pretty ironical name because shopping is exactly what you wouldn't be doing at a normal Meent. Myself, as a kid, I lived in Culemborg, a small town under Utrecht. And I had this great experience that every weekend we would go to the Meent. And the Meent was an actual Meent. It's a big area where they dug away the sand and it became a big lake. And you could just recreate there, a big fat park. And that comes close to what it originally used to be. The Meent. And there are many other words for this in Dutch. Marke, another one. Brink, another one. So if you have ever played the Dutch Monopoly, you know now what the brink is. In these places, the people who were working for their lord, who were producing for their lord, could produce for themselves. Their basic problem was that the lord would usually ask so much taxes for the work on his land, and the tax would have to be paid in whatever they grew on that land, of course, that would be difficult for them to eat. Therefore, the municipalities, the Gemeentes, which is now an official body, but then wasn't. That was just the people who are living there. The Gemeentes, they had communal land. And in those spaces, people were allowed, very strictly though, there were a lot of rules, regulations, it was really well defined, but basically people were allowed to grow their own potatoes, for instance, to have a few cows grazing, things like that. Never too many, of course, because that would deplete the land. But enough so that people could actually keep on living, while in a subsistence kind of way, while on the other side of the fence they were working for their lord in a producer-consumer relationship, and of course also in a lord-master relationship, but just let's that leave out for the moment, in a consumer-producer sense. So what we have now, private property and public property, didn't used to exist. There was only common property and private property. And the Meent in Holland, and way earlier already in England, Marx writes about it a lot, the enclosures. The Meentes were slowly taken away. And we have a saying for that. It's called mandegoed, schandegoed. This is something that came up in the early 19th century, and it meant to have a Meent of things that come from the commons are shameful. Well, of course, why this was ever thought up, nobody really knows. But what the effect was is that, especially the more upstanding citizens, so to say, the people who were already active and successfully so on the markets, they were trying to promote the idea that common property is a bad thing. And over a period of hundreds of years, people started to believe that yes, indeed, common property is a problematic thing. We all know, well, maybe in 1968, there's a biologist, economist, Garrett Hardin, and he writes a paper, it's called The Tragedy of the Commons. Most people will have sometime, maybe in their school days or at university, they will have heard about this. And also Hardin tries to show that the Meent, the commons, is a form of property that will have to deplete itself. Why? Because on the commons, so the place where everybody has their cows or sheep graze, the people who own those cows or sheep are selfish, and therefore they will always try and introduce more and more sheep. And if one does it, the others will too. And then a few runs later, a few seasons later, all the grass is gone, all the sheep die, everybody's poor. that's not really true. There are many thousands, millions of commons in the world. It's just in Europe, in Western Europe, that the practice became non-standard, so to say. It's just here. And there's immense institutes, research for the Commons Institute and things like that. They work with this. Big NGOs work with this kind of stuff, Oxfam and things like that. They all try to re-promote the idea of commons elsewhere, but not here. And that's a really big shame. We really need to be doing that kind of stuff, and that's why I'm so happy that we're here today. I mean, this is a really small space. And while you can do really great things with really small spaces, I think that right now this is a huge experiment, and it's a very politicized move, not indeed, as Ernst said, not against the municipality or the government or the market and all this kind of stuff. Obviously it is against all those kind of things, but it's so in a positive way. It's just, this is really trying to create a new reality. Trying to see how you can do this kind of stuff. Me and a lot of really big investment companies, real ones, in Rotterdam, we are trying to do something similar now. We want to have a whole neighborhood, an entire neighborhood. We want to put solar cells on the roofs. And the use of those solar cells will be for everybody who lives in those houses. Not who owns them or who owns the roofs, not the housing corporations, no, nothing like that. It's just really for the people who live there. And what we come across is, immediately when we propose to do this to the city, it's like this, that's nice, but it's not allowed. And why is it not allowed? Because if you make solar energy, you have to give it back to the net, making it public property. And then it has to be bought back by each individual who uses it. And giving it back, like giving it to the net, you will get a little bit of money for it, but this counts as income producing. Therefore you have to pay tax over it. So the net result is that if you make your own energy and try to use it yourself, it's going to cost you a lot of money, and more so if you want to do this with 10,000 roofs. So for me this is a great great way to start an experimenting with how can we make this kind of thing and do it in many different places. I mean, you are going to talk, Sasha is going to talk about the Creative Commons among other things. So that's the domain of intellectual property and the digital commons. But we can do this everywhere, and I really believe that we will have to do so. As the autonomous Marxists in Italy, they say now that the public property has become something that can be privatized, and that's all it is. And that's what we've been seeing in Holland too, of course, with the electricity companies, the housing corporations and all those kind of things. They have brought us where we are now, very rich country with a lot of possibilities for most of the people who live here. But we are eating them up now because some people need the money, the revenue that they can give. Okay, so we need to take them back somehow. But we need to take them back not in a conservative way, of a conservationalist way. We need to take them back while creating things. That's the only way to do it. That's what I believe. So what I hope fervently is that if this succeeds, if this is going to happen, I hope that it will be a birthplace for many new Meentes, for many new commons. What is the most difficult about keeping a common or a commons is the thought processes that go into it, and they need to be kept alive all the time. This is what you see in the 1800s when this saying comes up: "Mandegoed, schandegoed." The ownership of common ownership is a shameful thing. You see that this kind of thinking can deteriorate, and it can do so in 200 years, and it's all gone in Holland, while they used to be everywhere. And so this keeping up, this working of how do you create a commons, how do you keep a commons. And if you have one and it produces things, how can you use the things that it produces to create yet other commons with other people again for other sorts of production, be they digital, be they commodities, be they education, it doesn't matter. So yeah, that's what I wanted to say. That's what I hope is going to happen here. I fervently support this project, and I hope that we can, well, in not such a very long time, also start one in Rotterdam. Thank you very much.